Okay, hello everyone. This is our week 4 lecture. So hopefully you're getting something out of these and are continuing to listen to them. So in week 4 this week, what I want to talk about is the notion of representations in Revit. So really to make use of the model that we're creating as we work in Revit, we need to have representations, right? So in this example, I have a model, right? So if I look at my floor plan, I have a full model like this, or even if I look at a perspective view, I have this full model that is the entire building. And then the different representations of the building are how I ask to see it in any one way. So here I'm looking at a perspective view and I'm asking shadows to be cast and to put some color on it, while in these other views, these are different representations of the same exact model. So, if I zoom in and I look at this door, which this door is the same door represented both in plan, elevation, 3D, they're all the same door. So that item is being represented in different ways. And so basically the view that I'm looking at kind of controls or tells the object what should it look like in one view or another. So a door in the plan view is made up of an arc and a rectangle, and the door here is a rectangle and a chevron, and the door here is this 3D geometry that exists. So the notion that the view itself, so the view that you choose to look at, so whether that be the plan view, the elevation view, or the 3D view, it has some interaction with the object itself. So it tells the object when it's displayed, when this elevation is displayed, the object is asked, what do you look like in an elevation view? And the system returns back, well, I look like this. So this notion of the view itself being a way to communicate with the model is kind of important to understand. It seems, kind of basic and simplistic, but at a, kind of deeper level, or a computer level, if you will, it's really kind of a complex situation. So that object itself is really holding the geometry, right? So we're not really drawing the geometry of this object anymore. This door just is the way it is. It looks that way. The actual geometry of that thing is held inside the definition of the family. So we've talked about families before, that the family really controls what that thing looks like. So for example, if I wanted to alter the way this thing looks, I would need to go in and I need to edit the family. So I'll go ahead and do that just so we can see what it looks like. So now I'm editing the family. You can still see my project kind of in the background here, but notice my tools are different. So that lets me know I'm in the family editor and I'm editing just the door itself. So my project doesn't close. I'm just editing this family. So I'm wanting to change, say, the way it looks in the floor plan, let's say. So I'll go to my ground floor, and it uses this arc, but maybe I don't like to see that. Maybe in mine, I use something, let's use this. I'm going to use a line, and I like to represent my door swings like that with a diagonal, and I don't want the arc. Okay, so I've made a change to the way that thing is going to represent itself. I'm going to make one change to this here. Let's see if, yeah, I want elevation swing. That's what I want. Oh, no, maybe not that. I maybe want elevation swing cut. Let's try that. Why is that a... Yeah, we'll go with that for now. So I've made a change to that door, so I'm telling it I need it to be represented differently in plan. So I've made that change to the file, to the family file, and now I'll send it back to my project. And you'll see what happens when I send it back to my project. I'll go ahead and overwrite the existing door. And now it's going through and it's doing something. And now you see if I close these, don't need them anymore. Well, I won't save that as a permanent thing. I'm just going to save it to my... So now you see I've changed the way all the doors in this project now represent themselves in plan. So this representation was carried as instructions to the family. So anytime it finds a door, it does that. So it's acting similar to the way a block would in AutoCAD, but it's important to know that the system knows that that's a door, and that the system is requesting, what does a door look like in elevation, or what does a door look like, or what is this door in particular, right? So we don't want to draw that geometry anymore. And what this does, why this is important, is now it kind of can offload that representation job onto, you know, one or two people in an office that are able to kind of control the way drawings look. So you can have a better quality control in not only the way every single object gets represented, but you get better quality control because that object is only represented one time. The designer only has to pick the object, and all the representations are handled for the designer. They don't have to concentrate on that. They can just concentrate on making sure, did I get the right door type in here, and does it meet the design qualifications that I needed to do? Does it look right? Do I want to use a different door because it would look better? So I can concentrate on the designer as making the right choice for that object and not have to worry about the way it's represented, assuming that my CAD manager, my BIM manager, whoever's keeping track and making sure my drawings are going to have a certain visual look to them, as long as they're maintaining the representations of these objects, I can be free to just use the objects and design them as I will, right? So with this as well, I want to make sure it's, you know, clear also that these views that we have, so a plan view, for example, is more than just a representation of an object, right? It's more than just a representation of my building in plan. It's also a way for me to interact with the model. So I've shown this probably in class, or you may have discovered this. So if I'm working, say, at the entry level, so we'll use this elevation so we can kind of illustrate this, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I'm going to draw some geometry just that doesn't really make sense to my model, but it works here. So if I'm working on entry level 1, and I go ahead and I choose to draw a wall, and I go ahead and put that wall in right here. Oh, this is cropped. Hang on a second. Let me turn that crop off. So there's that wall. Let's make a better wall. There's that wall. Let's make it into something that is solid. And so there's that wall. So what I'm trying to point out here is that wall, when I drew it, it knew that it should draw it down here at level 1. Now if I change my view up to, say, floor 2, so now I'm working here on floor 2, and I draw another wall. So let's place another one, and maybe this one's okay to be glazing. And I place another wall out here over here, like so. Finish that up. That wall was just drawn up here at level 2 with its bottom at level 2. So these views are a way to interact with a model as well as a tool to view it, obviously, but it's a way to interact with the model. So for example, when I'm looking at this wall in level 2, and I zoom in here so we can go to level 2, I get certain controls, right? I have controls on the end to pull it back and forth to make it longer in length, but in order to change the height of it, I would have to come over to my properties palette, and I would have to make a change to the upper level top constraint. I would have to make a change there. Now, if I'm working in a view that is the elevation, notice the controls that I get here. Now I get controls so I can make it both longer, and I can change the height of the object and the base of the object graphically. So the elevation, or the view itself, is actually a way and a tool that you use to engage with objects, and objects will have certain abilities based on some views. Or if I try to put some things in a perspective view, I'm not able to. Say if I want to place a, well, let's find the right view here. So if I'm in this view here, in this perspective view, and many of my tools are turned off, I don't have much of anything that I can put in. Where if I'm working in this 3D view, all of my tools are available and I can still work with the model. So the view is a method of working with the model as well as a representation. So remember that the view is actually a tool, and you can use these things because you can make as many views as you want. The model is simply there, it exists, and your views are just you choosing ways to cut and slice and look at that model in different ways. So in many ways, the views are actually kind of for free. They don't tax the system, they don't make the file size any bigger, anything like that. You can have as many views as you want, and you can create working views and views just for plotting and things like that. So make the views that you need to get at the model in the way that you want to get at it, right? Now, there's also a notion of that some things make sense in some views and some things don't make sense in other views. So we have to have some way to control that. So let me close down some of these so I'm working with just 2 views here. See if I can't get it to the way I want it to be. Okay, and then I will just display these 2 views. So in this example here, it makes sense. Actually, I'm going to do a different example because I think there's a better place to do this. So let me close that, and let me close. No, I don't want to close that. Oh, shoot. Open up my project again here. Sorry about that. So let me look at I'm going to look at this 3rd floor. This will make more sense. So this 3rd floor in this interior view, or this rendering view, if I change it to realistic, I think we can see those people show up. I think. Let's see if they show up. All right. Takes it for a minute here to make them show up. All right, there we go. So there you can see my people kind of showing up a little bit here, and as it kind of renders out a little bit more, it'll show up a little bit better. But it makes sense in this kind of rendering. I'm trying to set this scene of what this building looks like up here during the daytime. It makes sense to have some people in there. But for something like a working drawing on say, for example, my floor plan, if it'll let me switch to it. Maybe I can't switch to it here. Try that. Okay. See if it'll let me switch out now. All right. Oh, there we go. The people, you can see them there. So it makes sense to have the people in this view, but in the floor plan view, it doesn't make sense to have those people necessarily. So here we can see. So here's those people. That's the person. So you can see the type, the family type is this male, Alex, and a couple other, Jay, and whatever this girl is, Florence. So those people are there in this drawing, and if this was my working drawing, my construction document, I might not want to have these symbols here because they might just be confusing and they don't make any sense to the person who's building the building. They make sense when I'm rendering and presenting it, but they don't make sense in this context. So we have methods to actually control this. So I can come to this object and I can say, you know what, I don't want to see any of the things that are within this category. So this category is entourage, or whatever the category is. It could be walls, it could be doors. I'll have another example here in a moment. So I want to turn that category off, and now those symbols disappear from this view. So we have ways of controlling that. So it's not that those things are gone from this view, I just turn them off. So if I want to see them, I can reveal them again. I can press this light bulb item down here and reveal them. And you can see there's some other things that have been turned off in this view as well. But here they are, and if I want to get them back, I can unhide them and bring them back. And then I can turn this light bulb back off, and now they're back in this view. But it's important to know that you can turn off the visibility of objects that make sense in one context but don't make sense in another. So let's turn these guys back off. And then let me show another example of this, because this one is kind of a glaring kind of example where you might not want to have the entourage people in there, but something else that might be a little more subtle that you want to make sure that, you know, those items are still in the model, but you just don't want to see them in one particular view or another. So let's look at, let's open the entry level. And then let me do this so we can look at them both at the same time. I'm going to close my hidden views, and then I'll look at the furniture layout and then tile these two together. So here's an example of these tables are here in the cafeteria, and I want to show them in the furniture layout plan because the person who's delivering the tables to the project wants to know where to put the tables, and I also want to include the tables as part of my overall project costs. So I want to count them and know how many I have to order, that kind of thing. So it makes sense to have them in the model and have them as part of the database of the model that I can query and ask what materials they are or what kind of chair we're buying, that kind of thing. So it's good to have that in the model, but for the person laying out and doing the construction of the building, they don't necessarily care where those pieces of furniture would go, so I don't include them, so I turn that category off. So again, if I used the light bulb, you would see that there are the tables there. They're still in the model, and if I was to select one, so if I selected that one and I deleted it, it would go away in both places. So it's important to know that, I'm going to undo that, put it back. It's important to realize that those items are in the model. They're in all the views, but we're controlling what elements we're going to see, or there's a method to control what elements you're going to see in certain kinds of views. All right, and this brings up one more thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about representation here as well, is that in some views it makes sense to have annotation elements, and in other views it does not. So there are two kinds of things here. So if I added a table, let's say, let me turn my light bulb back on so I can make this correct. So if I select that and I right click and I say I want to create a similar one, and I add one in here, we'll say maybe I'm going to add a whole row of them. All right, so I'm going to add in these tables. Oops, didn't want to do that. Add in some tables here, just like that. Again, must be zoomed in a little closer here. There we go. All right, so I added 3 tables, and you can see they were added over here in this view as well, right? So those 3 tables added in, but they went pink. I can't see them. They're still part of the model. So adding model elements, so there's 2 classifications things. There's model elements, and then there's annotation elements. So when I add model elements to a view, they appear in all the views, no matter what. Unless you have some override to turn them off, like I do here, they won't. The new ones won't appear. Okay? If I do something like this, however, if I add some annotation to a view, it's in this other category where annotation only appears in the view that it's placed in. So if I do something like this from the annotate menu, and I place some text, for example, and we'll give it a leader of some kind, and I'll do something like that, and I'll say, place furniture as indicated. So now I've added that note to this view, so it's going to show up in this view, but I don't get a piece of text here. But I still have text here. So text, annotation and text, so text, the room numbers, the door numbers, these annotation types of elements are view specific. So annotation elements are view specific, model elements appear in every view no matter what. So we have these 2 kinds of elements, and there's there's one more kind of element that's a little bit of a hybrid, something like this, like a section mark, that it is annotation, but it's really creating or marking a view, so it appears in all views with some rules around it, and those rules are related to how it crosses view planes and those kind of things. So there are some kind of hybrid objects like this that do appear in both as model objects, and they are an annotation, but they act like a model object. So, but the main separation to remember here is model objects appear everywhere in every view. Annotation objects appear only in the view that they're placed in. So we have these two kind of separate items that exist, and then there are other things on the annotation menu. So anything that's on the annotation menu here, that's all going to be view specific. But there are some things that aren't just text. And dimensions. There are things like detail lines and regions and detail components, and we use these kind of things to embellish a view and do something that we need to. So if I added detail lines to indicate something on the floor, if it only needs to appear in this view, that's fine. But if I needed these lines to appear in this view over here, I need to do them with something other than detail lines, because these lines are only going to appear in the view that they're placed in. So the things that you find on Annotate are all going to appear only in one view. All right. And then the last thing that I want to make sure that I mentioned, I already told a little bit about it when I was showing how the wall drawn in section has handles that you can move and control that make it go, that you can control the height on it with. It's important to remember that you can use these views not just as ways of documenting the model, but very often as a designer you may want to understand what the sectional quality of a certain space is. It's kind of a little bit busy to understand, but it's important to go, okay, you can easily cut a section anywhere at any time in your building to make a better design and design a better experience of that space than you could when you have to generate these views for yourself. So whenever you have a condition that you'd like to understand more about that condition, maybe this is hard to understand here, maybe I want to understand that condition going the other direction, right? So I want to see what this section is, and maybe it doesn't really have a lot to do with actually documenting the model. I just need to see what that looks like. So I can put a section through. How about I put an actual section instead of that thing? Change it to a section view. I want to understand what this experience is like coming through that space from a sectional point of view. So I can place that thing and navigate to it through that. And now I can begin to understand, that I come underneath this canopy. Oh, maybe I can make it even go longer, right? I can come out to this canopy. That there's this kind of canopy exterior experience. I'll change this detail level so we can see this a little better. There we go. So there's kind of experience there, and then I come into this deep overhang, and then I have this. It's still a little bit coarse to see, but I have this kind of experience of this hole and this skylight coming down into this space. So, make sure to use these sections and elevations, etc., to understand how your building works in lots of different ways, not just simply from the plan view. When we're working with, when we're drawing lines and we have to do all the representations ourselves, we can get trapped by just designing something in plan and not really think about the section. Where using a tool like Revit allows you to really explore that design in a lot of different ways as you're working through it, without having kind of the overhead of needing to regenerate these drawings every single time. So make sure to utilize that in your design technique. It can only help make the design work better for you. All right, so that's what I have for week 4. I'll post this up, and you can take a look at it, and we will see you next time. Thank you.